This is a spotlight on our method area, the policy concentration. I'd like to just kind of give a brief overview of what it is that a method area is. So basically, if you are interested in doing a MSW program, your foundation year is really pretty ubiquitous for people across the board. So basically, the semester 1 and semester 2, these are courses that are essentially things that you will need to take as per the CSWE, the Council for Social Work Education. So that's really something that is ubiquitous. You really will be doing that no matter what kind of MSW program that you are in. But the second year, your advanced year, that's when you're going to choose your method area here at Columbia School of Social Work. So that's when you're really going to do, whether it's, policy or AGPP, it really depends. But you have basically an entire first year to really figure out what it is that you want to do, and really figure out where it is in the world of social work that you feel like you fit best. Next slide. And then finally, we have basically our 4 different method areas. So this is, basically the 4 different method areas that you have to choose from. And then this is what you will have to do for that final year. You have advanced clinical social work practice. You also have advanced generalist practice and programming. We have policy practice, which is what this lovely webinar session is going to be all about today. And then we have social enterprise administration. We're going to be featuring webinars on all of these throughout the week, but basically you're going to have a full hour today to really dive into what it is that policy is all about. And here's a nice definition of what policy is: the development of the skills for conducting policy analysis, policy advocacy, and doing research on behalf of a just society. So again, this particular webinar is going to focus all on policy, but we're going to have ones throughout the week, focusing on advanced clinical practice, advanced generalist practice and programming, social enterprise administration, and essentially how they differ, and why one might be better for you, why something might be better for somebody else. And we'll be answering questions, and during the registration process, you can also ask questions preemptively. But for now, let's focus on the policy webinar and introduce you to our wonderful panelists. Again, Professor Chin Gao, I don't think has joined us just yet, but she will be joining us very soon. And nonetheless, we have an amazing alum and a tremendous current student who is going to be able to speak all about what this program is. So without further ado, first, I'm going to introduce John Fallon. John, I'll let you introduce yourself to the attendees and also discuss where you currently are working and where you reside right now.
Sure, thanks, John. Thank you for inviting me to join. So yeah, my name is John Fallon. I currently live in Chicago, where I'm a program specialist with the Office of Head Start of the Administration for Children and Families. I work at the regional office where we focus on, implementing regulations with different Head Start providers across a 5-state region that basically stretches from Ohio to Minnesota. So I get a chance to work with the directors of these services, which is really great, but also focus on, what policy changes are being implemented and how to kind of communicate those ideas. I've also had a lot of different opportunities to work on other kinds of projects. Recently, I worked to convene a group of state diversity, equity, and inclusion officers. These were governor-appointed positions from each state in this region that I cover in the Midwest. We brought them together to kind of discuss, best practices, what's working in their state, to improve the, diversity, equity, and inclusion of their services and also of their state bureaucracy. So it was good to kind of help facilitate that, to have some kind of role in that important issue, especially following the summer that we had last year, and the greater awareness that folks had about race and racism. Um, other sorts of things, I've had a chance to do a lot of data visualization for presentations, a skill that I think is very, very handy in this sort of craft. But yeah, so I'm part of the federal workforce. It's kind of a journey to get into a federal position. There are different avenues you can take, which I'd be happy to discuss. I also am an adjunct instructor at the Erickson Institute. I teach MSW students there. It's a small early childhood education focused school here in Chicago. But yeah, I graduated from CSSW back in 2013, where I was a policy student. I think sort of leading up to that, I had been working with an organization in New Jersey that served individuals with serious and with severe and persistent mental illness. And I really enjoyed that work. And I saw that most of the folks in the management there were social workers. And I also kind of, at the same time, wanted to go my own direction and focus more on policy rather than in service administration. So I went and pursued my MSW. That's kind of what led up to that sort of thing. But it's good to be here. It's good to meet you.
Thank you so much. And Lauren, our current student, if you could introduce yourself and just let us know what your year is. And you're also a residential student, so you're here in New York.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. My name is Lauren Arnosky. I use both they and she pronouns. Like John said, I am a residential student. I am an advanced standing student, meaning that I got my bachelor's in social work already, and I got that in Southern California. My experience is predominantly with older adults. After undergrad, I worked in hospice and also the director of social services at a nursing home. But really after the direct practice, I've always been interested in policy, especially during my BSW degree. But it wasn't until I really had that direct practice experience that I realized that I wanted to do it for real. Also my field of practice is international social welfare, and then obviously I'm on the policy track. And currently at CSSW, I am a co-leader for the Disability Awareness Caucus, and I'm also the university senator here. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. And no worries about the dinging. Obviously, everyone in my office was trying to tell me that I wasn't sharing slides. So I was being inundated with G chats. Again, I apologize everyone for the little technical snafu. And Professor Gao, you came just in time. I was going to be introducing you just now. So thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you doing this. And I know that your little one is sick. So we really, really appreciate you being here with us. So yeah, I'll let you introduce yourself unless you need a break or take a breath. I can definitely stall for a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm okay. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm Qin Gao. I chair the policy division, which is where the policy method area or concentration is. I also coordinate together with my colleague, Dr. Neeraj Kaushal, the accelerated policy program, which we will be talking about a bit. I also direct China Center for Social Policy. So anyone who is interested in that can also raise any questions you might have. Very happy to join this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate you being with us. I'm going to start with a very general question that is for you, Professor Gao. Can you basically explain what is the policy practice method area here at Columbia School of Social Work?
Thank you for the great question. So our students who choose the policy method area aspire to become policymakers or policy advocates or policy analysts. So we have a broad view of their career paths, and these are changeable, interchangeable. But our students who choose this method area want to shape policy and want to improve people's livelihood and well-being through policy changes, not only to make policy, but also to advocate for better policy solutions, and also analyze policies to show what's working, what's not working, and what needs to be done. So I think just a very broad view about the policy landscape. We also not only work on US social policy, but also international social policy. So we have students coming from different countries who want to shape and change policies in other countries. We also have graduates who work in international organizations, such as UNICEF or UNDP or other kind of international organizations to hold this comparative lens to change policy and human well-being in a broader global scope.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And just as a follow-up question, I mentioned briefly during the beginning of the session that students, by and large, aside from the Accelerated Policy Practice program, which we will get to, but by and large, they take pretty similar courses that are pretty ubiquitous throughout a lot of different MSW programs. And then their second year, they will begin taking classes in their actual chosen method area. Can you tell us about what are the tangible skills that somebody in the policy method area will leave CSSW with, and what are some of the kind of classes and the specific things that they'll be learning as a student in this particular method area?
Thank you. Another great question. So in the first year, the foundation year, all students take a social welfare policy course that's required for the foundation year. And that's housed under our division because we oversee it. So through that course, students learn about basically the US social policy system, healthcare, mental health, families and well-being, every kind of major social policy you can think about. But based on that, in the second year, if you choose the policy method area, you get an in-depth understanding of the US social policy system. So we have two courses that's required. Both are one-year sequences. So one is a policy seminar, 1 and 2. So the first semester in the fall is a foundation, not foundation, builds on the social welfare foundation course, and really look at the major social policy areas and also understand the potential career path for our graduates. So in that seminar, usually professors would invite back some of our graduates to share their perspectives, what they've been through at the city, at the state, at the national levels. In the second semester, students delve into a policy area. They have to write a policy brief. So this is a core skill students learn. They have to present a policy issue, but in very concise language, also using graphics so that the message can go through to not only the policymakers, but also the public. So that's one sequence. It's called the policy seminar 1 and 2. The other sequence is also very essential, is micro and macroeconomics sequence. So the fall is microeconomics, the spring is macroeconomics, which really builds a solid foundation for the policy students to understand economics, but also applied economics, how it applies to social policy issues and social work issues. This course, this one-year sequence comes with a lab, and the labs are usually assisted by previous students who took this one-year sequence. So it's to use economics knowledge and skills to solve some real-world social policy issues. It's a very exciting one-year sequence. So those are the two central courses. We also have a lot of elective courses for students to build skills. So I would say those elective policy courses can be classified into two sets. One set is skills-based. So for example, I teach a course called Advanced Research Methods and Statistics. It also comes with a lab. So students will learn how to use Stata, which is a statistical software package, to pin down an issue, a policy, potential response, analyze the issue, and then write a paper. And quite a few students in the past have written good papers that are publishable. Some of them published the paper. So this is a skills-based course. In this coming spring, we have another course offered that's a geoinfographics analysis, so GIS courses. That's also a skills-based course focusing on geoinformation analysis. So we also have other courses that's aimed at helping students to gain an in-depth understanding of a certain policy area. For example, one policy elective course that's very popular is federal policy. So we have Professor Jeanette Takamura, who worked in the federal policy system, will provide an overview of the federal policy system and help students to gain an understanding of not only the system, but where you could start your career in that system. We also have a course called Global Social Policy. That's for students who want to work in the global social policy system. So we have many electives, and students can choose from this menu of courses depending on the kind of skills and areas they want to further their understanding on. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So many amazing classes to choose from. It's really exciting. John, my next question is for you. As an alum of this program, can you tell us a little bit about what your experience was like doing policy practice? And are there any highlights to the program that were specifically very formative for you?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it was great to just hear about the opportunities to take coursework in GIS and Stata. I think in a real practical, applied way, those skills can be really, really useful. The federal policy class with the former dean, Jeanette Takamura, was also mentioned. And I think that that course, which I took, was incredibly helpful for just getting a better grasp of how federal policy works, how it goes from bill into implementation and through committees and so on and so forth. Just really, really helpful. In fact, I believe that I used the paper I wrote for that course, the kind of culminating paper we wrote, for a variety of purposes, one being just having a writing sample handy for different jobs. And I think one job offer I had said that they really, really liked the writing sample that I put together just for the sake of this course, and kind of offered me a position, not on the basis of that. So yeah, I think if you, there are just many opportunities to take advantage of it and to leverage it into you know, your whatever career direction you take. But I think outside of those things, being at Columbia created a lot of opportunity to engage with different ideas, to see different speakers come, especially through, you know, Morningside Heights being there and Columbia as an institution offering a number of you know, speaker series and so on. So I remember watching Angela Davis, Cornell West, and so on and so forth, and just learning a lot from participating in campus and city life. So yeah, I think I gained a lot from the program in many different ways, and yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Now, Lauren, we spoke a little bit about how, like, the journey that a student typically goes when it comes to, you know, finding what their method area is. Can you tell us why you ultimately chose policy as your method area, and what your goals are post-graduation?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite the journey for me, especially because I did my BSW. So it was 4 years of social work courses. And so I really was able to kind of wrestle with all of the different paths and areas of social work. One thing I want to preface, which I love about social work, is that there is, you know, movement. There's room for mobility within social work. And I think that is what's so incredible about this discipline. But the way I kind of went about it was during my BSW, I really fell in love with all of my policy classes. I found myself really engaging with the material so much more than I did with any of the other direct practice work. And then it wasn't really until I had my first year placement, I was at a mental health clinic, and I really enjoyed that work. And I also really enjoyed the direct practice work after graduation, but I found myself always feeling like I was putting out fires, right? And I would see these clients experiencing the same problems. Every single client would have the same problems. And I'm just a very much like a big picture person. I'm always like, okay, so what's the overall problem? What's the root to this? And that's really what led me to policy as a whole. But kind of going back to the mobility, I think that's what's really great about this is that I think all practitioners should understand the various levels of social work. And, I still like, I really appreciate my direct practice experience because I think it can be really good informed policy that comes from, knowledge of direct practice. I really want to go into federal policy. I'm going to be applying to some fellowships and things like that. So I see myself working as like a staffer or a policy analyst, wherever that leads. So yeah, anything like that.
That's amazing and so eloquently said, because I think I hear that a lot from students who are interested in something like policy or something more macro, is that their decision to get into that method area was very much informed by a lot of their direct practice work. There's a lot to be said for that first year field placement opportunity where you actually learn the ins and outs of what a social worker is really doing. And then from there, you can say, do I want to do this every day, or do I want to do something that's a little more larger in scale, where I can have like more of like a helicopter view and try to make systemic change across populations. And I think that you start to really find what it is that like makes your heart sing and why you want to get up and do this every morning. My next question is for you, Dr. Gao. For students with like a very strong commitment in policy, there's a specialization, as you mentioned, called the Accelerated Policy Practice. Can you tell us a little bit about this program and how it differs from the traditional policy method area?
Thank you for the question. So that's a very exciting program. It's for students who have had some work experience and who know for sure when they enter our school to pursue the master's degree, they're going to be choosing policy, right? Lauren talked about the mobility. Students can choose and decide and shift. But for the students who apply and get into the accelerated policy program, they have to be very sure when applying and joining, they're going to be in policy, because when they enter in their first year, they are going to take the micro and macroeconomics classes at its labs. So it's more demanding in terms of coursework. Of course, they can gain the skills quickly so that in their second year, they can take more advanced courses to further hone their skills, or even write more papers that can become their writing samples or be used for job applications. And the other difference is that in the second semester of their first year, the students in the accelerated policy program already take the advanced research methods and statistics course I teach, or someone else might teach it, but it's using data. So that also comes with a lab, and students will learn to identify a data set, analyze the data, and write a paper. And many of them actually would like to pursue a policy career, but some of them would also like to pursue a doctoral degree. So they use that paper, an empirical paper, as a writing sample when they apply for the doctoral programs. It's just a very rich program. It's demanding. The one benefit, I wouldn't call it a benefit, but in their first year, because of the demanding coursework, their field hours is slightly reduced from the regular 21 hours to 17.5. So it's a little bit less in terms of field hours, but quite a lot more courseworks in the first year. Second year coursework similar, but the APP students have more room to choose electives and also to apply their skills already. So that's the main difference. Again, if any of you have any questions about that program, you can reach out to me later. Thanks.
And also, just to clarify, this is something that once you are admitted to the program, you can then apply to the accelerated policy practice. This is for students who have been admitted to Columbia School of Social Work's MSW program. And then those who are very committed and have a really strong interest in doing the policy program, you'll submit an essay, explaining why it is you want to do this and what your goals are, and also a brief description of your past experience. Because this is for somebody who does have a little more professional experience, for somebody who really has a solid understanding that this is what they want to do. And so having that, being able to see on your application that there's a wealth of opportunity that you can draw from and really kind of make this decision with is really important for us. So I just wanted to clarify that this isn't something that you apply to during the application process. This is really something that once you're admitted, you can apply to. Another question that we get very frequently here at the admissions office is field placement and what that's like. In general, and we'll talk about this in other sessions, that first year field placement is direct practice in nature. So a little bit with what Lauren was speaking about, engaging with clients one-to-one, connecting them with resources to enhance well-being. And that's really kind of how we define it. So I would like to also just talk about the second year field placement. The second year field placement, I think, is something that a lot of people are very, very interested in, just because it combines the method area and potentially the field of practice that you choose as well. So I'd like to know, both John and Lauren, about your advanced year field placement. So John, we'll go with you first.
So prior to the advanced year, I applied for the Fisher Cummings Washington Fellowship program at CSSW, which is basically a program that supports students in relocating to Washington, D.C. for their field placement that advanced year. So I had a chance to intern at the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, where I worked with folks on different issues, including child traumatic stress and suicide prevention. So I had a pretty great access to a diversity of different folks with different backgrounds at that office, including anthropologists who were studying suicide from that kind of perspective and applying it to their work in policy. Yeah, just a lot of different folks with public administration backgrounds and so on and so forth. Some psychologists, PhD psychologists as well, which I think is one of the interesting things about the policy track, that you have exposure to so many folks with different kinds of academic and professional backgrounds. So yeah, that's where I did my second year field placement.
Excellent. And Lauren?
Yeah, I'm placed at the National Advocates for Pregnant Women, which is a legal org, nonprofit working in the, broadly reproductive justice space, but their real niche is focusing on the criminalization of pregnancy. And a lot of that kind of ties into sort of where social workers play in the role of criminalization of pregnancy. At this internship, I'm doing a lot of policy analyst work. I'm also doing a lot of legislative tracking. They don't really have a legislative arm of their org, so a lot of that is kind of starting that up. And I'm also working on this larger research study that they're doing, which is a arrest report. And right now we're working on the coding for that project. So, it's really, really fun. I am so excited to be here because I've wanted so long to do macro work, even when I was trying to find when I had my BSW placement. So CSSW is awesome because I finally was able to do that. So
That's amazing. And I'm going to focus a follow-up question on just your experience, Lauren, when it came to actually choosing the second year field placement, because students have much more agency in that process. And so many students are just like, how do I know what I'm going to get? I want to know now. And so can you kind of describe what the balloting process is like? And And I'm not sure what format. I imagine it was virtual, but I believe there's a field fair. If you can kind of describe like that whole kind of like journey and just like how you actually chose it.
Yeah. So they, especially for advanced standing, it all happens very fast. So I think there was a question in the chat that was like, do we need to know this before? And honestly, the sooner you know your field of practice and your method area, I get those, like the terminology confused on both of those things, but as soon as you know, the better off you'll be, because the more specific you can apply that to your placement. And the field advisors are really, really awesome at working, like talking with you and like discussing the different options. So as soon as there was a summer before, they sent me like a form, and I filled out the form with all my interests. And then I had like a one-on-one meeting with the person that would be placing me, and we just discussed different options. And I ended up changing my method area, so my method area doesn't really directly apply. And so there is like, I know that sometimes they are able to kind of change things after you've been placed, but it's really difficult because certain placements can do both, right? They can do the clinical stuff and the policy stuff, but certain placements are very specific and they won't be able to give you the requirements that you need if you try to switch. So yeah, definitely. It's kind of a lot to, reconcile before you come, but just as sure as you can be is the best. But I find that the faculty here is really, really work really well with you on trying to find a placement that will, and also just like keep in mind the goals that you want to have after graduating, right? Like, what is the kind of job that I want to have, and how can this placement kind of pivot me in that direction? Because it could be a great placement, but maybe completely different than where you see yourself in 5 years. So that's kind of another element that you can add to.
That's great and really great advice. So thank you so much. Professor Gao, this next question is for you. A lot of students, especially when registering for the policy webinar, were asking about research and different research opportunities. And I know that you are the director of the university's China Center for Social Policy. So I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about the work that research center does, and if there's opportunities for students to take part in the research that you're doing.
Thank you. I think our school and Columbia in general is such a rich research environment. So I also saw in the chat box, someone was asking whether there are research opportunities. There are a lot. So for example, the China Center for Social Policy, we pursue many, I would say 10 or above research projects focusing on different topic areas. For example, migration, aging, health, poverty, gender inequality, the welfare state, comparative welfare systems. So we pursue many research projects, and on many of those research projects, we have student interns joining on those efforts. I will give a concrete example. Recently, we just published a report jointly with the UNICEF China to look at child multidimensional poverty in China, which is something that has not been looked at before. So China mostly looks at poverty based on income measures, but we think multidimensional measures, especially focusing on children, is very important. So we launched this project 3 years ago and involved quite a few students, both doctoral and masters, and produced this report, which is now being quite widely circulated and paid attention to, both from the Chinese government, but other international organizations and the governments. So that's just one example of what kind of research we pursue. We also foster career development for the students, as Lauren was mentioning. So when I assign projects to students, I really pay attention to what this student wishes to achieve, not only right now, but also in the future. So some students work in more of the international facing projects. Some are more domestic facing. So we have another project that is studying New York City residents speaking English, Spanish, and Mandarin, how their lives are changing. And our current focus is how COVID has impacted their lives. So there are students who could actually combine their policy and research skills, but also clinical skills. They do interviews with the study participants. So we cater or match the projects with the students' aspirations and their skill sets. It's not only this center, there are many other centers. I don't know if you have talked about it. For example, the Columbia Population Research Center each year hosts quite a few students as interns to do research. And the students not only work on concrete research projects, but also join these seminars, discussions, so that they can be exposed to the top scholars in these fields. We also have a poverty center on poverty and social policy, which also hosts student interns and work study students who can work as research assistants. So I'm happy to talk more about those, but I think especially for the students who not only want to work in policy, but also research, these are great opportunities to get involved in and get to know other scholars. Thanks.
That's amazing. And so when you say student interns, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that sometimes like a second year field placement for students?
Most time is second year placement. Occasionally, we also host first year interns, especially for those who conduct interviews with our study participants, because they work directly with the clients, right? In this case, would be the survey participants. We also have in-depth interviews, so we really gather people's lives, how they talk about their lived experiences. That's very clinical.
That's really amazing. Thank you so much. So I also wanted to talk briefly, John, once again about what your current position is. I know that you described it a little bit during the introduction, but can you just tell us once again what your current place of employment is, and then kind of explain how you feel Columbia School of Social Work prepared you for this position?
Sure, yeah. Well, I'll start actually thinking about what I did immediately following my MSW. So immediately after finishing the degree, I was offered a position with Booz Allen Hamilton. They're a federal contractor. And how I got that position was basically through a connection that I made with an alum through the Fisher Cummings Washington Fellowship that I was part of. So for Booz Allen, I worked at the Defense Suicide Prevention Office. And I think a lot of the experience that I had dealing with the topic area of suicide prevention at SAMHSA during my internship helped segue into that role at the Defense Suicide Prevention Office. So the Defense Suicide Prevention Office was interested in consolidating policy across the different armed services branches. So, the Navy was doing something very different from what the Army was and from the Air Force and so on. So they wanted a uniform Department of Defense policy on that. So, for the purpose of, pushing a unified policy out, I worked with a small group, a team at Booz Allen that was doing some research to identify best practices. What was the Navy doing that worked? What was the Army doing? Kind of comparing those and consolidating a lot of that information. Also digging into some of the research, looking at what tended to work and what didn't. So that was a great opportunity. And I enjoyed it. It was hard in many ways, but I wanted to do something different. I had followed the family and children services track, and even written a paper about Head Start for the policy seminar course that I had with Dr. Jane Waldfogel. So I was definitely interested in Head Start, and an opportunity after I was done working on that project came up. And it was the opportunity that brought me here to Chicago in the first place, which was to work for the Office of Head Start. And I worked for a number of years there as a contractor with Booz Allen. And then I was able to transition and become a federal employee, so to directly work with them instead of working on the contract. And so for the Office of Head Start, I review a lot of I review applications that come in for competitive funds and also for non-competitive funds. So every year an organization has to submit an application to continue doing what they're doing, to discuss what their changes they're making, and then our office has a chance to kind of approve those things. And so much of what I do is also related to providing technical assistance, and that usually takes the form of the Office of Head Start introducing a new regulation or new guidance on something, and organizations having questions about it, and I'm able to kind of provide them some discussion points about how they'll be able to implement it, what they'll need to be concerned about. And I think one thing that I also kind of mentioned was the opportunity that I've had to work on different projects, kind of even outside of what I do for the Office of Head Start. So recently, I was on a detail assignment, and there's certainly many of those in a federal career that are available to folks. And this detail assignment worked with different offices in each of the states in the Midwest here in the region that we serve, bringing together their diversity, equity, inclusion officers to have a conversation. Many of those people in those governor appointed roles were new. And so they were all kind of building the plane as they were flying. So to kind of have a chance to facilitate that state to state policy discussion, I think was really valuable. I also had a chance to kind of work on some issues related to runaway and homeless youth as well. So I actually applied for an internal grant to make sure that funding was accessible for a project to kind of continue gathering data on a project that served that population. So yeah, just a lot of different opportunities always pop up in the federal workforce. And it's been a really great kind of fulfilling opportunity. Also, a lot of stability kind of comes along with working for the federal government, which is great as I begin getting older and having other responsibilities. I think I can talk about starting a PhD program also, and I've been doing that part-time for a number of years and kind of working to finish up here soon.
And I hope I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but have you decided what you might be doing, what your topic might be for your dissertation?
Yeah, so I've completed all of the coursework necessary for the PhD, and
this is a PhD in social work, correct?
Yeah, so I'm at the University of Illinois at Chicago, and I started working on that. I don't even know, a year 2016 maybe. So I've been done with the coursework for a while and working on my dissertation now. It's related to Head Start and kind of looks at the history of the program. So I analyzed congressional hearings from two time periods. The first is a time period in the 1960s, and the second is congressional hearings during the early 2000s. Just before the 2007 reforms that were made to the Head Start program. One of those big reforms is that there was an introduction of the competitive application process, or at least the formalization of it, which hadn't existed before. And many have argued that that's an introduction of neoliberal principles to this important war on poverty social services program. So I'm interested in how the rationale for Head Start has changed and varied over the years, what kinds of arguments between those time periods we still hear, and how Congress discusses it. And so that's kind of the focus of my dissertation there. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you so much. Lauren, my next question is for you. We have a number of amazing caucuses here at Columbia School of Social Work, and I know that you are the leader of the Disability Awareness Caucus. I was hoping that you could speak a little bit about the work that caucus is doing and how new students might be able to join.
Yeah, Yeah, so I am a co-leader of the Disability Awareness Caucus. I have a team of like, I think there's 4 of us. I'm blanking right now, but they're a good group of us. And currently we're just focusing a lot about kind of supplementing CSSW curriculum with like inclusive, knowledge about disabilities. We want to host an event with different panelists to kind of integrate that disability curriculum. We haven't done a ton yet because it's just been so busy, but I will say that for anyone that is interested in joining a caucus, Student Life has really, really incredible pages for each caucus on the website. So, and they do update those every year. We're submitting our video today, I believe. So probably in the next few days, if you're interested in caucuses at Columbia, all of the new videos will be up there. And this is just a really, really awesome way to get connected to other students. I know how nerve-wracking it can be because I moved from California all the way over here, knowing no one. Like this whole process can be very intimidating. I'm a first-gen college student. Like it's a lot. So community building is so important. And I will say one tip is they will probably send an email saying to ask if you want to be a co-leader of a caucus. That if you are interested in like actually leading the events, fill that out, because otherwise you'll just be like an active member, which is totally fine. But if you want to be involved in programming, be aware for that email. I know a lot of people missed it and they're, emailing different caucuses saying, hey, I want to be a part of it. And it's already decided. So yeah, and we have an Instagram too. I can plug it. We're trying to make that grow. So.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. There were a lot of different questions that were brought up whenever students registered, some really awesome questions, which I've really tried to weave through the presentation here. But one in particular that I thought was very notable, especially for this presentation, Professor Gao, is just there's a variety of different policy programs that a student can go into. Why would somebody choose a policy program within a School of Social Work? What separates a policy program in a School of Social Work from, let's say, a master's of public administration or going to an ed policy, master's program? What is it that one would gain from a policy program within an MSW?
Thank you. That's a profound question. I've pondered that for sure. I think not to brag about social work, but I think we have heart. We care so deeply about the people we serve and want to work with, as both Lauren and John said before. It's not that we just want to change a policy, shape the policy landscape. We want to use that as a means to improve the well-being of the people and increase social justice. I think that's just so deep in our bones. I cannot say, I think other schools and programs aspire to that, but I think we just are so deeply committed by choosing to pursue policy in a School of Social Work. I think another strength of ours is we have this view that a person or a policy exists in the environment. It's not abstract, right? We read these other analyses that treats a policy as a rational, purely rational or efficacy pursuit. It's more complicated than that. We see, when we see a policy, we see people impacted and making the policy. So I think that's different. That makes us try to analyze it from a more human-centered perspective, but we also try to deliver the message through so that it can be heard. It can be translated into actual policy. So I think that's our unique perspective. Of course, in today's world, things are very interdisciplinary. We work with different experts, different disciplines together, but I do think we have a unique strength. And if you look at our faculty and scholars, they make change happen. yeah, I hope I can convince you, but if you have additional questions, do let us know. I think we have a strength there.
Awesome. And then one follow-up question is that students who are, thinking about doing an MSW program and a policy program within an MSW degree are also very very attracted to the ability to be able to do that kind of direct practice work as well. And so we have questions about whether or not they can actually take the clinical courses necessary to sit for their LCSW. Can you speak to whether or not that's possible, or if it's something that's something that other policy students do?
You want me to answer? Lauren, did you want to answer this question? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I can speak to this briefly. For sure, yes. So you have room in the policy curriculum to choose electives, and some students are very purposeful. They want to get a license, so they will choose the necessary clinical courses. And our school is great. We run licensing exam workshops. So that's open to anyone. If you want to be sure you take those necessary courses. I've had students who chose policy, but then worked in clinical or community settings because somehow it was a good fit in terms of the focus area, or because we have international students who needed a visa and the clinical setting provided the visa. But I think as Lauren mentioned, it's quite fluid. I think once you are trained, you get the social work degree, you are trained in policy, and you are exposed to these other areas, you're well-rounded, and who knows, those experiences might prepare you for a better policy career path down the road.
That's amazing. Lauren, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to like how Columbia is different, because I think a lot of schools offer macro social work degrees, but policy really is so like specific, and there are specific practical skills that you need to have to go to be a policy analyst, anything, and I think when you get a largely like macro degree, that doesn't necessarily equip you in the same way that Columbia, I feel, has already started to do. In my seminar class, like he's always talking about policy relevant, is this a policy relevant discussion? And a lot of those things I think you don't get when it's just like broadly macro. So just plug for Columbia. It's specific, and I think it's good that it's specific.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. I know that we are coming up on time, and I promised you all this would be about an hour. So I want to make sure that I respect everyone's time. So I just wanted to close by saying thank you again. This was fantastic. But also, if each one of you could share, what are some of the most critical skills that a social worker focusing on policy should leave CSSW with? And I'll start with you, John.
Well, I think Dr. Gao actually mentioned some of them earlier. If I could start from square one and go back to my master's program, I would definitely make sure I left with an understanding of GIS, maybe not expert level, but just like a basic familiarity. I think statistical programs such as Stata or SPSS or any, one stats package would be really great. And I think something that I was certainly served by is having an understanding of economics. I think that really sets you apart from a lot of other social workers. I think writing skills are also really crucial to have. I think a lot of folks probably underplay their writing skills, but by the time you leave the program, you'll have the APA format drilled into your head. You'll have written so many papers that you'll certainly improve. There's also, at least when I was there, a writing center, and I wish that I had utilized them more. I think I may have been a little bit cocky about my writing at that point, but I certainly stand to benefit today. I know I at least recognize and wish that I would have taken advantage of that resource. So, writing skills, data analysis skills, data visualization skills, all of those would make you really kind of coveted by any employer in the policy space.
Awesome. Lauren, we'll go with you next.
I think just echoing all of those like hard skills, I think all of that is so important. And I really hope that I can walk away from CSSOE having those. I think just maybe this is more of a philosophical thing, but being okay with being in a political environment, if that makes sense, like navigating those spaces, because policy is not written in a bubble. And, you know, we all have our own values and the things that we really don't want, like we would die on the hill for, but kind of acknowledging that negotiations and things like that have to happen in order for policy to happen and change. So just being prepared for that and kind of doing that internal work, I think is really important.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And finally, you, Professor Gao. Thank you.
I want to echo what John and Lauren just said. I think communication skills, both written and oral, are so important. Also using graphics to get your message through so that people wouldn't ignore you because you're using a lot of technical jargon. I think that's very important. Also to be able to hold this long view that the temporary setbacks and disheartening political processes, they are there, but in the long run, what we do matter, and we should keep an eye in the long-term return. And it's true, in the long run, what we do matters, and we will make the world a better place. Thank you.
And I can't think of a better way to close. Thank you so much. All three of you were fantastic and such an inspiration. And I think you really, really clarified a lot of questions and just demystified a lot of processes, which I think is really important for prospective students, especially when it comes to choosing, you know, a degree as important as an MSW, where so many are affected by the kind of work that you do post-graduation. So I just want to thank you all again so much for participating. And I really appreciate it. You are all fantastic. Thank you. And for everyone else, we'll be having events throughout the next 2 weeks. Our next method area session is going to be on the Advanced Generalist Practice and Programming method area. That'll be on Wednesday at noon. I'll be sending an email to everybody on how to register for that event. And once again, thank you so much to our three panelists. It was just fantastic. Thank you. Thank you.